Welcome to Fides Wealth Strategies Group Financial Moment. We have Dr. Chris Rand, I'm Mark Gallo, and today we're going to talk about estate planning. And estate planning is a very robust topic. Chris, get into some of the finer details.
Well, when people think about estate planning, what they're really thinking about is making sure that when something happens to them, they become incapacitated or they pass away, that their assets are taken care of, or at least are able to pass on control of those assets to somebody else.
And if they can minimize taxes in the process,
even better, or cost too,
yeah.
right? Because that's one thing we hear from people when they are going through the estate plan process or the probate process after someone passes away. Man, this takes forever. It costs a lot of money. There are a lot of fees. There's a lot of emotions going on at the time, which is kind of add and compound to the problem. And so one of the areas that a lot of people think about as part of financial planning is getting an estate plan done. Yeah. Maybe you can talk about some of the basic documents, Mark, that somebody gets when they contact a lawyer's office, an estate planning office, and that attorney prepares some basic documents for them.
I mean, a basic document package that somebody will do is an estate planning document or a trust packet. And that trust packet will start with some basics of, hey, how do I want my estate to move? Different than a will or a trust, an estate planning document itself and a trust will actually transfer those assets by contract to the next of kin, which is really kind of makes it convenient. You don't have to have a court involved and probate involved. That's a big one.
Yeah, so what you're saying is if they have a family trust or living trust, it's that trust document is a contract that in essence avoids probate and then passes those assets on outside of probate.
Outside of probate, which
we like to say, we like to say immediately. I don't think that's a proper term. It does take time, but in the context of a probate court, it's a heck of a lot faster
and cheaper
than going and less expensive than going through that process.
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, a trust itself is just a written document that an attorney will put together that will help clearly outline where things are going to go and who's going to be in charge of handling that, which will then at that point in time bypass the court if possible.
The probate process.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always applicable to use when you have a large estate. It's also applicable if you have a small estate. I always like to look at a trust as it's a way to be able to tell the assets where they're going to go when you can't speak for them on their behalf.
Yeah, maybe, Mark, a good thing to tell people is like when should they get a trust? What scenario? Because I've had people come to me and say, well, I think the lawyer's office is just trying to sell me a trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it seems like that's the answer frequently. And many times a trust could be appropriate, but maybe a couple examples of when a trust might be appropriate for somebody.
I always like to look at things like if you own a home and you've got children, it's a really easy thing to be able to put together. That's a good one. If you've got a blended family, that's a great one, right? It's complicated on how you want the assets to get distributed. Yep. That's always a big one. If you have an estate in excess of, what's the limits now these years? It's over 10 million now, right?
It's high, and it's something that's constantly talked about in Congress to change to avoid, or rather to exempt from the estate tax. But if you have a very large estate, we'll just say.
If you've got special needs children like myself, I've got a special needs child. I want to have a trust put in place to be able to take care of our children if we were to predecease them. That's always a good one. There's so many different applications.
Yeah, how about managing the assets if you're ill? Like, forget the scenario where you pass away, but you become incapacitated or you come down with Alzheimer's disease or something like that. One of the benefits of a trust is that the successor trustee can step in that case if you're incapacitated and act on your behalf to maybe sell the property if it needs to be sold, move assets around, liquidate investment accounts if that needs to be done.
You do need to have an attorney involved to be able to make that transition happen along with your doctor, right? It's not they can just take it away from you.
I can't do that. No. And that's up to you and the attorney to talk about what those criteria are, right? I mean, it might be a medical doctor certifying incapacity. It might be two medical doctors certifying incapacity. It might be that in a period of time. That's for you and the attorney to discuss what's appropriate.
Yeah. Now, some people in here might be already have a trust. How often do you think that they should get reviewed and updated?
Yeah, I don't. It's kind of a hard one to say. It's obviously if anything changes, so you want to make a change, like you no longer like
you don't like your child,
you don't like your son-in-law anymore.
Sorry. Yeah.
Maybe you fall out you're not as happy with them.
They didn't
as
invite
you
you to
were
Christmas,
before.
whatever.
Whatever the reason is.
Yeah.
But aside from that, an obvious reason to make those kind of changes, whenever the law changes, and it's not something that happens monthly, but there are changes on a somewhat frequent basis. I think a lot of lawyers will say every 3 to 5 years is good to have it reviewed.
Yeah.
If you have a trust done, maybe the law office will reach out to you when it's, if there is a change that affects you. But it's a good idea to, on a frequent basis, to have that reviewed.
Let's talk about what happens if you don't have a trust.
Okay.
A lot of times I like to talk about if you don't have a trust, you die what's called intestate. Intestate basically then means that it's up to the court to determine how those assets are going to change hands. I always think of Anna Nicole Smith. There
have been so many.
Oh my gosh.
People that are well known that pass away without a trust, without a will, dying, like you said, with intestate, and then it goes by the intestacy laws of the state. And so the state that you pass away in will determine where your assets go. Generally speaking, at least what I've seen, has been next of kin. But your definition of next of kin may not be the same as the state's definition of next of kin. If especially with the halves and the stepkids and things like that, it can get kind of messy. And so maybe having a will, if you don't have a trust, having a will will help to avoid. You still have to go through probate, but it'll help to avoid the state's intestacy laws.
Yeah, which is always important. No, okay, so that's just one part of of an estate. When you start dealing with an estate planning documents and everything else along those lines, what else is out there you can do from a trust standpoint or a estate planning standpoint that it's important to people, like gifting? That's a good estate planning technique as well.
So people are all historically, I think, have been concerned, especially going back a couple decades ago when the estate tax limits of what you could alleviate from paying estate taxes on were relatively low in comparison to 2021. You would want to gift away some of those assets, and you can give away a certain amount of money each year without paying gift tax and without reducing the amount of money that you can pass away at your death. And so that changes every year. It's a large sum of money that you can give away on an annual basis. You can give it to, give it to anyone that you want. You can give it to each kid. You and your spouse can each go ahead and give that. It's called an annual exclusion gift. And that's a way to go ahead and reduce your overall size of your estate.
You also have like a one-time amount you can do as well. A lot of times as well.
That's true, but you're really just giving away what you would be able to give away at death.
Absolutely.
And so that may be a good estate planning technique if your estate warrants it. It's an advanced maneuver. You definitely want to sit down with a financial planner. You want to sit down with your estate planner and your accountant to make sure that you're within those guidelines.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's our financial moment today. I appreciate you tuning in. Again, this is Fides Wealth Strategies Group. Mark Gallo, Chris Rand. We'll talk to you again soon.